Welcome to Powerboat Talk, the podcast where we talk everything performance boats with your host, Joe Rode.
Well, hello and welcome to Powerboat Talk. Today I have another special guest. I met Miss Taylor Scism from MTI Marine Technology, I guess is technically the term. It's MTI Boats in Missouri. Yes. And Taylor is the Director of Client Relations, although of course it's a family business, so she wears a lot of hats, so I'm sure that's just a small part of her daily duties. So anyhow, we're here in the morning. Thank you very much. We're both pretty bright-eyed, it looks like.
Yes.
So thank you for joining me, and how's things going today?
Absolutely. Things are really good. We've got quite a busy schedule coming up. We have Mercury's 50th anniversary next week, so we're very much looking forward to celebrating with them. Then we go right into our MTI Bahamas trip. Now we have, I think, 15 center consoles going on. And then we go right into Sarasota racing, so busy couple weeks coming up.
Wow. Yeah, and I just saw, did you guys just do like a 25th anniversary, like big bash at your
We
place?
did. Yes, we just had celebrated our 25th anniversary here at MTI. So we had a big event down on Lake of the Ozarks, kind of our backyard here. So we were excited to have our customers come up and really get an experience. Some of them had never been to Lake of the Ozarks before, so that was cool for them to come see kind of where we are all the time. And some of them came and did factory tours, and then we had a fun celebration weekend. So it turned out really nice.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, you guys seem like, from what I follow with you guys, it seems like you have a really kind of a family culture, not only with like your family, I'm assuming since you and your dad work there, but they're the owners. It seems like you guys do a lot of that kind of stuff where there'll be a bunch of MTI guys getting together.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I grew up in the boating industry. My parents took me pretty much everywhere they could, so it's always been very important for me to continue that on and for them to make it a family environment and make it a welcoming place where people can bring their kids and they want to have their family vacations as our March Fun Run during spring break every year and do those type of events. And I think some of my favorite part of that is seeing people who meet from different parts of the United States at our events and then come shoot out. They're renting houses together and they're doing other trips together. It's just pretty cool to see stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very cool. And then I guess the fact of the popularity of center consoles, I'm sure that has just really fostered family environment. You know,
absolutely.
The cats probably aren't the most family friendly in a lot of situations,
right.
But center consoles, you can't get any more practical. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. At what point, I mean, did one day they wake you up and said, okay, you're now part of the family business, you're going to work, or how did that come into play?
So I've always been involved my whole life. I did boat shows all through high school. Any way I could help, anything like that, I would be at, and doing all the poker runs and everything like that. But I think it was, so when I went to college, I went to University of Mississippi and I studied business marketing and manufacturing engineering. So with the manufacturing engineering, it's a specific program that Ole Miss has that's put on by Toyota and Haley Barbour. And it's manufacturing, so it's accounting, business, and engineering students, and they only take 50 people a year. And so it's like a quite intensive program that all of us work together throughout the whole 4 years in the same classes. So you come out of that with the people who market a product understanding the engineering side of it and the engineers understanding the budgeting side of it, because a lot of that isn't intertwined when it comes to that holistic education. So that was what was really appealing to me when it came to that school, and that's kind of why I chose it. And we had a full factory floor, everything donated from Viking, Boeing, like we had some really cool stuff we were able to play with. So we're out there learning how to weld, doing water jet cutters, all that kind of stuff. So it was something I was definitely interested in doing the family business, but I kind of wanted to explore it on my own and make sure that's what I wanted to do. And my parents were very supportive of that. They were kind of like, do what you're happy with, and then if it ends up here, we're ecstatic, but if not, we understand. And so that was kind of my course there. I did look at other opportunities and everything, but at the end of the day, I was like, why would I do anything else? You know, this is what I love. This is so cool. And so I took, I think 2 months after college and like gave myself a little bit of a break. I did like a creative intensive kind of, I guess, class down in Atlanta to kind of like work on my marketing stuff, and then started with MTI in August of, I think 2018. And so then I was full-time with MTI, and it's just kind of been growing since.
Well, that program sounds amazing,
Yes.
and it sounds like your dad created it and signed you up for it because it's like sounds perfect for the boat business.
Yes, it was really cool. I'd never heard of anything like that. And I had just gone down there because they had an honors college program, and I was just looking at that. And when they'd presented that program they had, I looked at my parents and I was like, okay, that sounds more like it. Like, that's pretty cool. I've never really heard of anything like that. So it was a very, very cool experience.
That's very cool, and it kind of worked the other way too. Like your experience with them growing up, you've already kind of got this. It was almost like a built-in internship early on. Like
Yes.
you got in and you realized, okay, here's what I kind of don't like, here's what I like, here's what's
Mhm.
intriguing, and then you found a program that like just threw you right in. That's really cool.
Absolutely. Manufacturing side of things, we were able to do like some small internships where we did consulting for like Milwaukee Tool and ABB and like some stuff with Peterbilt. So we were able to get with some of those bigger names and get in those manufacturing facilities and really see like while we are not your typical manufacturing where it's like
Right.
process after process, you still learn a lot and are able to take away the bigger idea and implement it here.
Yeah, you could see, there's always I've always worked at small companies, and there's always that someday factor. You're like,
Hmm.
well, I mean, this laser cutter or this whatever
Hmm.
process, like, you're never going to get there, but we're seeing it now. We've seen it in the last 10 years,
Absolutely.
right? Like 20 years ago, if I said like I'm going to have a laser cutter, there's no way. Well, now like
Hmm.
every hot rod builder, boat builder's got all that stuff. So
Right.
you gotta keep an open mind because of the someday pie in the
Absolutely.
sky thing you might get to. So you gotta set your processes so that you'll take advantage if it can happen. So yeah, it's really cool. The other thing I liked is the interaction because everybody thinks I think they come out of school and it's like I'm an engineer, I'm a marketing person,
Hmm.
I'm a whatever. And the reality is you guys, everybody has to talk and interact and work together, and that whole team thing,
Right.
getting the engineers to understand what marketing is trying to say, and getting the marketing people to
Yes.
understand we can't market something that an engineer can't build. So that's really
Hmm.
cool. That's really cool. And
Yes.
and the really good part about that is the fact that your dad was open to hey, if it works, it doesn't, and he obviously
Yes.
and your mom, and they've obviously done something to make the situation inviting. So if you wanted to stay there, you were good. If you didn't want to stay there,
Right.
you weren't. So
Yeah, because a lot of people, I have an older sister, and a lot of people aren't as familiar because she's not in the family business, but she decided to go the law route, and she went to undergrad, went to law school, clerked for the Court of Appeals for the U.S. military, and now she's a assistant federal prosecutor in Manhattan. So
oh wow,
she's done phenomenal in her own route.
wow. And then let's hope she's never involved in the business.
Yes.
So when you first started, I mean, were you literally like obviously you doing boat shows? Did you kind of migrate into sales like early on because you were on that aspect of it, or did you kind of or just were you sweeping floors, working in the glass shop?
So, boat shows, I kind of just would answer questions on the boats, stand around, people had questions, I would answer them. It was very difficult, anybody taking a 16-year-old seriously. So, I think that was probably the biggest hurdle to get over, was people wouldn't take me seriously just looking at me. But when I started talking, they'd be like, oh, wait, you actually kind of know what you're talking about. So, that was probably my biggest hurdle at first. That was kind of more just high school helping out. And then when I got in college, my first semester, or I guess my first summer, after my freshman year, I came here and actually did these books that are somewhere around here, but they're probably about, I don't know, 5 inches thick, and just documenting our processes because we learned that we had a lot of tribal knowledge here and that one person knew how to do something, but another person didn't if that person was on vacation or whatever the situation may be. So I just took a whole summer and basically documented all of our processes and put it in a couple big books. So that was definitely not the most exciting thing ever, but I learned a lot from it, and I think that's the most important thing.
Man, and it's important that your dad did that. I was just working for a company that we've been in business for 30 years and like literally had nothing documented. It was insane.
Hmm.
So good for your dad. But yeah, what a great way to learn. Like
Absolutely.
you were probably like creating stuff that he's like I never really thought about how we did this.
Right. And there were things that I think no one realized that we could improve upon. Like we were doing, one thing that it was taking us so many hours when we could have actually outsourced that and it would have been cheaper and more efficient, but no one ever knew that until we took a magnifying glass and really started looking at the individual processes. And so that kind of helped being able to kind of like trim some of the time off anyway as well.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And then, well, obviously, right there is an example of how your skill set from college, you were allowed to. Because I always say this kind of when it's a family business, there's always two things that happens. Either the kids are not willing to work or don't want to work or not interested, and then there's also the flip side where the parents like, you're going to come in, you're going to do this, don't think, I don't want to hear
Right,
your
right.
ideas, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
again, very cool that you guys have that relationship and it's working that way. So you mentioned something that, and I don't know, maybe big of a deal, but I always think about a female, especially a younger one in this industry, because I mean it's dominated by males, mostly older, right? A lot of old
Right.
guys in there set in their ways. So
Yes.
how do you navigate that? How's it been? You get yourself are there uncomfortable situations? You find that a lot where people don't take you seriously. How's that work?
I do find it, but I feel like the best thing to do is just not dwell on it and just prove it, basically. So if someone like, I find a lot, not as much now, but early on at boat shows, I would have people come up to me and be like, hey, do you have a salesperson I can talk to? And I'd be like, well, actually, so that was kind of frustrating at first, but I just be like, oh, I can help you. And then just start giving my spiel and then be like, oh, okay, like I get it now. So I think just rather than like saying anything or coming back at it, whatever, just being like,
Sure.
let me show you. So that's kind of what I found. And I think just even with the racing stuff, like just going to the driver's meeting and being like, I belong here. Like no one can tell me otherwise, and I'm just gonna act like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask you kind of the same in the racing. So let's talk about the racing just for a background. So
hmm
I think you're racing is it a super stock boat? Is that the class you
So we're
race?
stock 450. So
Stock
we're
450.
the class just slightly bigger than as far as power and size for the boats than super stock.
And you use one of the MTIs, and which MTI is
Yes,
it that you race?
at 39.
39. It's and
Yes.
you're in twin 450 Mercuries.
Yes,
Are they stock? Are you allowed to do anything to the motors?
completely stock.
Totally stock. Okay, which is fast enough these days, right?
Right.
Well, you're a racer, so it's never fast enough. What is it? It's how fast do you guys during a race? What's top speed generally? Do you have?
So those boats are about 130. We might see like 120s during a race, but that's probably a pretty flat race. If it's rougher, you might be teens or even lower if it's like a huge Cocoa Beach race or something like that.
Gotcha. But solid overweight, solid 110,
Oh yeah.
mile an hour. So,
hmm
okay, so now offshore racing now, so
Yes.
you race a lot of, it's, I guess call them inshore or lap races. So what,
hmm
4 or 5 laps, 6 laps generally.
Anywhere from 7 to 10, depending on the course length.
Okay. So I'm sure there's a lot of those guys with a lap race, even though it's in the ocean. They watch NASCAR. I mean, there's a lot of probably, because I would imagine that, I know some of them are fairly wide, 3 or 4 pin turns. So I would imagine
hmm
there's some advantage to be had in how you drive through the corners. And
Right, absolutely.
so how are you treated there by the boys?
I mean, there's always comments being made, but I let her just run off my back and just have fun with it. At the end of the day, I think the class is super cool because there's so many manufacturers that can fit into it. Currently, it's us and Doug Wright, but there are others that can definitely build to the specs for the class, and I hope they do. And I think that's one of the coolest things is all these manufacturers that have these pleasure boats can put a safety canopy on them and take them out racing, and then you can like really prove your product. So I think that's one of the coolest parts of that class, that it's all stock. So you can't make a specific race boat, you can't change the bottom, you can't do any of that kind of stuff. You got to take your pleasure boat mold, put a race canopy on it, and let's go racing. So I think that's one of the more fun parts of it, that it's not necessarily like unlimited budget wins, because in some of the classes it's kind of like if you've got the biggest budget and you know how to change this and change that, like you have a huge advantage. Where with us, it comes down to prop choice, setup, lane, and driver and throttlement. So there's really not that many factors that go into it, whereas like some of the other classes there are.
Yeah. And like you said, I think I was just listening, I saw somewhere, I think, are you getting like 10 or 12 boats in a race or something like that? Or
So the most we've had is 6 so far. There
okay.
is a seventh one that MTI is finishing right now, and I believe there's a couple others that Doug Wright's finishing. So I think we'll be close to 10 by Key West for sure.
Okay. And then how did the race boat thing come about? I mean, your dad had it in his lap going fast from day one and just always wanted to do it, or?
Right. So, kind of like backing up a little bit with the outboard cat, I think one of the biggest things was when I was in high school, I was like, oh, I want to go drive boats. I want to do this. I want to do that. Well, my dad was like, inboard boats, you can't just take them out every single day and like run around. Like, you've got to keep in mind your hours you're putting on it and all that kind of stuff. So he was like, man, I want something I think a little bit easier for you to handle at your age and experience and all that. So that's when Mercury had come out with the 400 outboards. So we were like, well, let's kind of see what we can do here. So we came out with the 34 outboard, and that was a much more manageable boat, an easier boat for us to just take out and run around in. So when we came out with the 34, that was kind of like our first stepping stone into the outboard market. And that really helped me get more seat time and was able to take the boat out more and everything. So it kind of grew upon that. So taking into racing now, there wasn't a class that we currently fit in when I wanted to look into racing. So super stock, we don't currently build a boat that fits the specs for that class. And my dad was not about to let me go like, class one unlimited or anything like that as like a first time racer. So we kind of looked at it. We're like, well, what would fit? And the 450s were so popular. So we were like, well, is there a class here? Like, and so we kind of looked at, well, what are the other manufacturers doing? What would fit this class? And kind of worked with OPA, APBA, Race World Offshore, and kind of like sat down and said, all right, guys. And the other manufacturers said, are you guys in? Would you guys be interested? And kind of help build that class based off what all's out there to make sure it really accommodated and everybody could come racing. So that was probably 2019, and we had the boat slated on the books. It was going to be built, and COVID hit, so then we kind of pushed it back a little bit because we're like, well, are we going to build a boat, and then maybe there's no races to go to, so that got a little delayed. Once we finally got to building the boat, we made it almost go public, and it was like probably an hour before the actual article was going live, and I hadn't told my mom yet, so that was interesting.
Wait, you hadn't told her about the boat and the racing?
No, she had no idea.
Oh, that's awesome.
So my dad was like, okay, you better call your mom. We were in Florida. It was right before, I think, a boat show or something like that. And my mom was back in St. Louis. And so he was like, you better call your mom. I was like, well, this is probably the safest time to do it because we have a couple states between us. She has a little time to calm down before she sees me in person. So I called her and I told her, and she was like, absolutely not. This isn't happening. She's like, I run the books. There's not a boat being built. You're not getting one for this long, whatever. And I was like, well, actually, the one that's like says demo, it's actually a race boat. And she was like, there's no way. So it took her a minute to come around, but she's around now. She's probably my hardest critic now. So she is a fan of it. So the first year we were completely by ourselves. Second year, Randy Keys joined us, and then also Willie Cabeza, and then we had, I believe, 2 Doug Wrights in Key West, so the class grew pretty quickly, and now there's almost 7 of us, so it's awesome.
Well, I love this story. I love the fact that your dad said you have to call and tell your mom.
Yes.
And I bet the next call he got was from her.
Yes. And if you've seen any of our setup at the races, the talk was I get a truck and a pop-up tent and a boat. The rest I need to figure out. Well, then it was the motorhome. Then it was the smaller truck. Then it was the semi. And now we have a semi, a motorhome, 2 tents, 2 trucks. It's grown. The team has definitely grown.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's cool. That's cool. But obviously I'm sure that, you had a lot to do with the logistics and everything about that. So.
Yes.
Oh, that's very cool. So did you always just like going fast, or you knew you
I
wanted
did.
to
I think
race at some point?
the shootout was really like my first experience of any, like, I know it's not technically a sanctioned event, but formal event to do. And I thought it was so much fun. And I think the main part of me wanting to go racing was that I wanted to learn because I feel like back in the day you had to learn more setup and props and all that kind of stuff. Whereas now we know all of our models so well. When we have a new model, we do some of that. But like once we get done with that, you bolt the motors in the same spot every time. You have, 3 props you pick from, depending on what the customer wants. And like, it's all pretty standard past that. And so I really wanted to learn about center of gravity and motor heights and, figuring out all those different kinds of things and what props to pick and the different setups between different races and a kilo run and all that kind of thing, all those kinds of things. So that was my real motivation behind going racing, was that I wanted to learn and I wanted to like I said, I tend to want to do versus just talk. And I wanted to kind of get some of that street cred built up and like go out there and do it. And so I'm not just talking about it, I'm actually out there doing it. So that was some of the big motivation behind me wanting to go.
Yeah, awesome. And then you had, I can't remember, was your dad throttling initially for you or?
So Johnny Tomlinson's been my throttleman. Randy jumped in one time, but my first race, we had tested, done the Lake X thing. Johnny and I had been in the boat a couple times, and then like the day before the first race, they called me and they're like, "Oh well, Johnny's running. I think it was Super Cat, and then we're putting you guys at the same time, so you need to find another throttleman." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like this is my first race. I've been testing with him." So we called Sean Torrente, and he jumped in with me, but it was a lot of fun. He was nice to me. He took it easy on me. It was a pretty rough race. There was a lot of incidents, and I think we only ended up running like 4 laps because they ended up calling it after that. But it was fun.
Wow. Well, there's a good initiation right there. You want to learn by doing.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I was baptized by fire for sure.
Yeah. 2 seconds. Here's a big load of crap. Go figure it out.
hmm
But okay, so that's what I was talking about. I knew you had Tomlinson, but I thought there was at one point you had. So did you have a lot of seat time with John before that race?
Not probably as much as I would have hoped for. I think we got the boat done. I don't know. Let's see. Cocoa Beach is in May, probably like March. And we took the boat out like one time, went to Desert Storm. I took it out like 2 times with Johnny, and then it was race weekend. So
Okay.
that was definitely it was interesting, but we had a lot of fun. And now I feel like Johnny and I don't even really need to talk that much in the boat. I just kind of I like to communicate, even if he's like, I get what you're doing already. You don't need to tell me. I just like to talk to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. So like we're all aware. So, but anymore, we really don't even talk that much because we kind of know what each other are going to do. And I've really built that throttleman driver relationship you have to have.
And from what I've never met him before, but from what I understand, he's a great teacher. Like,
Oh, he's amazing.
yeah. So did you feel when you got in the boat with Sean that time? I mean, did you feel like I'm sure you were a nervous wreck because it happened, but you had to feel pretty prepared, I would think, or at least.
Kind of. I think it was a big race, like as far as like it was really rough. And so it's like, okay, we're going off the inlet, you like the bow's going up, you're coming back down, you know what I mean? Like I'm just like, oh gosh, here we go. And so Sean was in Johnny's seat, and Johnny's a lot taller than me, so my seat sits up higher. Johnny's seat sat a lot lower. Well, we're like shoving things under Sean to get him to see higher because he's about my height.
Oh yeah.
And we're going out the inlet, and I mean, we're going up to where like, we can't see anything. We're coming back down. He looks at me, he goes, "Lil Tay, I'm not scared at all. You know why?" I go, "Why?" And he goes, "Because I can't see shit." I was like, cool, glad, this is going to be awesome. My Donovan can't see. I'm going out for my first race. I'm just like, oh my God. And he would probably kill me for saying this, but I think it's widely known. So Sean gets seasick as
No
a,
way.
multi-world champion,
No
amazing.
way.
Yeah, he gets seasick. So we're going out the inlet, and we go out there, and they're like, "Oh, we're finishing this incident from the last race. It's going to be a minute." Well, it's like a long idle from like where the canal is to where you're racing. And he gets on race control and goes, "Yeah, no, we're not going out there. We're going to sit right here in the inlet." I'm like, "Sean, like we got to get out there. Like we're going." He's like, "No, I ain't doing that." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I'm not sitting out there. It's too rough." So I'm like, "Oh my God." So we're sitting in the inlet where it's like protected. My crew chief Milton had put like Ziploc bags in there just in case. And
So,
I'm
so
just
you
like,
guys knew this going out.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So I'm like, oh my God, this is such a trip. Like, you can't make this up. But
Oh my
he
gosh.
held it together. It was all good, but it was just quite the funny first race.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I talked to Sean a couple of times. I do a little bit of writing. I've talked to him a couple of times for articles, and he could be a tough cookie. So that's good.
Oh yeah.
Was he tough on you too, or was he pretty?
I think he was pretty good because he knew it was my first
He was
race
bad,
and
okay.
it was a rougher one. It wasn't what I was used to. And so he kind of like kept coaching me through it and was like, you got to keep your focus. You can't like lose focus and all this stuff, which I still think about to this day because, sometimes, especially when you're a little more like spread out and you're not like fighting for your position, it is kind of easier to like fall into just like, okay, I'm driving, I'm doing this, but like not like being on top of it. And he was like, no, you need to keep your focus. You need to stay on top of it the whole race. Like he goes, it's hard to keep your focus for 45 minutes, like to keep zoned in the whole time. And so I still always remember that and try to like keep myself in it and not just like kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, gotcha. I always think about that with like the NASCAR guys or the an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like you can't like how do you not? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know those things are a handful, just like your boat's a handful, but like, how do you not just drift off? And it just takes like a
Right.
split second, right? So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, good advice. Good advice. So cool. So you're racing a full schedule this year?
Yes. Yeah, we've got, let's see, we've done Marathon, Cocoa Beach I wasn't able to go to because we had our 25th event. So Milton jumped in the boat for me, who's my crew chief. And then we did Lake Race, and then we have Sarasota, and then Michigan City, Sheboygan, which is kind of more like an expedition event for Mercury Racing.
Hmm.
And then we have St. Pete, Clearwater, Key West, and Inglewood. So
Wow.
still
Wow.
a good section of the season left.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is at least you're not working on those weekends, right?
Right. Oh yeah. Just
So
balancing all everything. It's
so
all good.
what's your end? I mean, do you have a plan? What's the end game? You just want to keep doing this? You want to keep progressing? I mean, you think this is something you'll always keep doing?
Oh, absolutely. I'm in it for the long haul for sure. So I know right now I'm kind of in a little bit of a transition phase. So when I started just doing marketing, and then probably in the last 2 years brought on the sales more. And what a lot of people don't realize is like at MTI, like it probably takes like if you're a new salesperson, because we have all of our clients, we have a lot of repeat clients and stuff. It probably takes you a year, if not 2 years, to get your first sale. And then once you do that, it's 2 years until that boat's delivered. So like it's kind of a long process to
Wow.
really like get into the sales rhythm. It's not just like, oh, I'm gonna start sales tomorrow. So like even though like from day one I've been interested in it, not until like the last probably year and a half, I've been like really in the sales vibe where I have like my whole like clientele. I'm working on active boats right now. We've gotten some delivered. So like having that kind of like turnover of getting them delivered and starting the new ones. So I've just been kind of getting into that a little bit more, but trying to take a little bit off my plate as far as like some of the marketing and event stuff goes. Since I am the only person that does that, we've brought on a couple of people to help with the events, and then I brought on someone to help with the apparel. So just kind of like helping get some of those other things off so I can take on more sales and put more of my focus towards that. And then actually the past, I think 3 weeks, my parents have been out of the country. So they never take vacation ever. So this was like one of the first times since I can remember that they've taken a trip just for themselves without any family members and not to do with boating. So they're on that trip. And since they left, my dad has forwarded his phone to me and
No
told
way.
everyone, any questions? Taylor's got it. And she's final decision. So that's kind of given me a little test ride these last 3 weeks of what it would be like to kind of step up a little bit more and take more on. So I've really enjoyed it though. It's been a lot of fun. Things come up and you deal with them and
Yeah.
keep moving forward. So I've actually really enjoyed it. It's definitely not have a single boring day here since like it's
Yeah.
been pretty busy, but I've enjoyed it.
Wow, good for him. That's awesome. So
Hmm.
3 weeks. Talk about
Yes.
God stepping off the ramp and just going for it. Very
Right.
cool. Well, very cool. So, and that's good. Obviously, it's good that you're enjoying it. Um,
Yes.
yeah. Have you fired anybody?
No,
Just
I have
kidding.
not, but I'm very lucky we have a good team here. So like we have great accounting, we have great, lamination people in charge, we have great people in every department. So like when something does come up, there's people I can go to and don't have to just like, okay, what do I do now? So it's really nice to have all those people to kind of lean on and be able to get some advice from and everything.
Do you feel like you're a good delegator?
I try to be. Yes, I'm trying to be more so because I do tend to, especially with the events and marketing and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I know how I want it. I just want to do it. So like I like control. I get that, but I'm trying to kind of like let some of it go little by little, so I can still have some control, but at the same time, I don't need to be doing like all of it all the time.
Yeah, that's good. That's a great skill to have, and it's good that your dad.
Hmm.
A lot of guys like your dad that start a company. That's their worst downfall is they can't delegate.
Oh yeah.
So that's good for him, and good for you that you're on top of that. So
Hmm.
well, cool. Since as far as your racing goes, where's the end game with that? You keep doing that. You really enjoy that.
So I want to keep doing it. I do very much enjoy it, but at the same time, I don't have the same luxury as a lot of my fellow racers that when eventually I want to have kids, I need to stop racing. So that's something that like I do keep in mind. And it's probably still a few years down the road, but like something that I am aware of and like we're gonna have to kind of like have that conversation one day. So I would definitely, I always want to be involved in the racing though. So like even if one day I decide I personally am done in the boat, I still want to be at races, helping people and kind of like teaching people what I've learned because I've had the best teachers you can. I mean, I've had Johnny Tomlinson, Sean Torrente, and Randy Scism. So it doesn't really get much better than that. And I feel like I've learned so much because for them, they've been doing this forever, that they're great teachers, but they've been doing this for so long they forget what it was like at the beginning, where I kind of feel like I have that like fresh knowledge of like here's the basics, like here's the stuff that like don't forget to like lift your tunnel tab in the corner, you know what I mean, like just the basic stuff like that. I would love to kind of like keep sharing that information and help any of the MTI teams continue racing and growing and hopefully bringing home the championships.
Yeah, great. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw on social media that you recently got engaged, correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
Plans are working. they're
Yes,
moving along.
yes. We're getting married April of 2024.
Awesome. So,
Yes.
okay, let's make sure there's no boat anything on that weekend.
Oh my gosh, I know. I literally was like, okay, so that's 2 weeks after Desert Storm and 2 weeks prior to the first race. Though that date works.
When I got married a long time ago, I was speed skiing, so we would do like a couple times a month. We would race out here, and when we decided to get married, and the one reason we decided to get married is because we're going so much. My wife's coming, and her mom's not happy. She's going on trips with this guy, and so I'm like, well, we really should get married because to make this legit. But we had to figure out a weekend, and literally like the only weekend that would work was Memorial Weekend. So we got married on Memorial Weekend because there's no races on Memorial Weekend,
Right,
Because it's holidays.
right.
But all my friends were like, "What are you thinking?" So my wedding, the parking lot was full of people's trucks hooked up to boats. So I'm like telling you, like, "Hey, look, I'm telling you right now, I'm not staying very long." So
Right,
but,
right.
yeah, that's what you got to do. So
Yeah, we're doing destination, but the place we picked is in the Keys, and it's because we can boat from Miami
oh my
down.
gosh,
So we're like, we're still boating. That's got to be involved somehow.
yeah, well, that is a cool point. So I like to hear for people that haven't been in an offshore boat. When you strap in that boat, you're in the water. How's the process go? What's it look like when you mill around to when you get to start and you get to the first straightaway?
Yeah.
Tell me kind of how it goes and what it's all about.
Yeah, so usually, so we start with physicals in the morning and then driver's meeting. Usually I'm pretty calm, cool, collected until like I know like, okay, we're the next race. Like we gotta make those final decisions. Hopefully no prop changes, but almost every time we do a prop change last minute because everyone's like, we need to like do this or this has changed or
Just start second guessing, or are you talking
yes,
because the conditions
usually
change?
yes.
Second guessing.
So yeah, we do a lot of second guessing. It's great sometimes, other times it's not been great. So, but that's all right. That's racing. So then we hop in the boat, get all strapped in. I like to take my time getting ready. So like if they're like we're out in 20 minutes, like I want to be down there getting in the boat, getting ready. I don't like being rushed because you put on all your safety equipment. You don't want to forget anything. You want to like be sitting in there. For me, I want to take my deep breaths, like get in the headspace. We always do our prayer before we get on the boat, so Johnny's always leads that, so that's awesome. So we're strapped in, we've got our oxygen, make sure that's on. We have 6-point harnesses, helmets. I wear a Hans device. Just kind of making sure we have all the safety ready, making sure we don't forget to turn our fuel pumps on, all those last minute checks. Then we go and idle out, and it can be anywhere from, a 30-minute to go get to the milling area, or it can be 5 minutes, just kind of depending on the race. And then we just kind of idle around. Sometimes you do parade laps. They're personally not my favorite. It's tough, especially when you have like 6 boats or something like that, and everyone's trying to like just stay in their lane, but you're going like 30 or 40 miles an hour, so you're like all up on someone's wake, and then you're not. Like it's not my favorite. But my favorite race setup ever is when they have the buoys out on testing day. You can go out, run your setups, get your data, make your decisions, and then go into race day. That's where I feel most confident because some race sites don't let them set up buoys. And like Lake Race, there was no testing until the morning of, and we had 30 minutes. So it was just like chaos, but it's okay. We got through it. But that's kind of how it goes up to the start. Milling Anymore, milling's kind of like almost an old school thing because some of the boats you couldn't stop. Like they had to keep going, you had to keep moving. Like for us anymore, I just like to point it at the pace boat and just sit there because we don't really have to mill. And I never want to lose sight of the pace boat because that's how you get behind. It's like if you're turned around and then all of a sudden everyone else starts going, now you're like trying to get back around. Like it's
Yeah.
just, it can be a little stressful. So just getting in that lineup, and that's when I feel like the the blood pressure starts going up. Marathon, Johnny took my pulse and he was like, "Guys, I think we might have a problem." I was like, "It's fine, it's fine." So he keeps it a lot calmer than I do, especially when it's a big race and there's a lot of boats out there. And turn one, that's always interesting. You hope everyone holds their lane and then you can get through it, but that's not always the case. So you really just got to be on your toes on turn one. And if you're turning and if you're going into a turn and you can't see, you still need to turn because if you come out of that turn and you didn't turn, you might be going into somebody. So, and just kind of always keeping those things in mind. And then it's once green flag, it's screaming on all ends of go, 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 go from the crew chief to Johnny and I, and everyone's just kind of like getting all excited and then the race is on. So it's always a lot of fun, especially when there is a lot more like back and forth and stuff, or like, someone's right on your tail the whole time. Like it just kind of makes it a lot more fun.
I haven't seen any of the Travis Pastrano / Jim York videos from the MTI camp yet.
I know. Well, I'm not a huge fan of internal cameras. I don't have a great filter, so I just feel that's not maybe the best idea. Maybe without sound.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. I think you're
we'll
underestimating
see.
the trending value of that.
Right. Or Sarasota, Travis is going with Johnny in the Class 1 boat. So I think that'll be a lot of fun for them.
That'd be interesting. Okay.
Hmm.
So a couple of things I want to ask you. One thing is I can't when you talk about holding your line. Well, first of all, let me ask you. I think you guys actually qualify for some of the races now for position, don't you, or do you just draw for position?
For 450, we haven't. Some of the other
Okay.
classes, like Supercut and Class 1, have. But for the first race, we'll draw, and then after that, it's whoever won the last race gets pole.
Oh,
And then it
gotcha,
just goes from there.
gotcha. And then is good as everybody is, holding the line with a 39-foot cat has got to be. I mean, obviously the technology in these boats is great. They probably turn way better than they did in the old days, but still,
Right.
I always think about that. And the visibility. It's like, how do you guys? I don't know how you guys do that.
Yeah, I think the visibility is probably the hardest thing because you're trying to like stay on the guy next to you, and then if they like pull up a little bit, then you're in their rooster tail, and then you can't see anything, and you know what I mean? So like, there's a lot of back and forth there, and that's where I really try to put like lean on my crew chief and be like, tell me where I'm at, tell me where I'm at, who's by me, who's this, and just kind of lean on him a little bit. And so we always try to get somewhere where we have visibility of both the turns, because at that point, like I can look at my cameras, but it's so fast reacting for everything. The time it even takes for you to take your eyes, look down, look back up, like things have already changed. So I just kind of try to lean on him to be like, tell me, am I clear? Am I clear? I'm going right. Am I good? Like just keeping that communication line open. And then he'll be like, your turn, turn, turn. You're good. You're good. And just kind of like having that. That's kind of what I rely on going into the turns.
Oh, that's good. So he acts like a spotter. That's pretty
Yes.
cool. So is he on the beach or is he out in the boat somewhere?
Usually on land somewhere.
Okay, but he's got enough visibility. He can help you with that. That's cool.
Yes.
And then, so I always think it's just crazy how, I mean, it's probably nothing for you because this is how you grew up. But having somebody else when you've got the wheel and somebody else is doing the throttles, that just always seems crazy to me.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think I'm used to it more than most because when I first started driving boats, my dad was always like, you just focus on driving. I've got the throttles. But again, it's a huge relationship you build. Like, I wouldn't just jump in with anybody and be like, all right, let's do this. Like, you definitely need to like have that communication. And like, again, like if you go on a turn and your throttleman's doing the tunnel tab and you like, they forget it or you don't mention it or, whatever, that could be catastrophic. So, like you need to have that trust that like they're going to do that, or like we have a visual. So like I just like glance at the visual, I make my turn. Like
Oh,
if it's not where I want it to be, then I'm like, hey, we need to do this, which usually isn't the case. But just knowing what each other are gonna do, that like I don't even need to say like, hey, I'm turning. Like he already's ready, got me set up, and I'm turning.
what's the visual light that you're referring to?
It's a light. So if it's
Okay.
all the way up, the tab's up. If it's
Oh,
down,
okay, okay.
like, so there's no light, then the tab's down. So just like having that where I can see it, and it's a nice, easy thing for me to just like be able to throw it in the corner with full confidence. Because if it's not like all the way there yet, you're like, I don't really want to throw it in there because, it's
Gotcha.
not
Oh,
totally there yet. But yeah, it just helps for making my turns.
okay, cool. Got it, got it. And then, who's the one that's screaming, "Go faster, go slower"? I mean, is it mutual? Sometimes.
Usually we don't have too much of that conversation. I
Yeah.
mean, if we're like on someone, I'm like, go, 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 come on, I got it,
Okay.
I got it. Like, so it's probably more like sometimes, like going in a turn, he'll set it up and I'll be like, I think we can go in hotter next time. So like there'll be like
Oh,
some
okay.
things like that. But usually if it's a rough race, I just, hold on and hope for the best. If it's
Yeah.
like how it was Friday in Key West, it was pretty gnarly.
Because that's the part I always think about is like, wait a minute, I can't drive this fast. Like, slow down. I don't know if that's the case, but that's kind of what the first thing that always comes to my mind because I think of some of my friends or something. If like they had the throttles and I had the wheel, I'd be in trouble. Like it would just
Hmm.
hammer down. I don't care if you can drive through this stuff.
Yeah. So Key West on Friday, Willie Cabeza, who drives the GC Racing MTI, it's the like kind of like tealish one. So he's got the new iPhone 14 that has crash detection. So he had turned it off, luckily, but I guess it still tracks, and I guess it tracks your G's or whatever it may be. And during Friday's race in Key West, it went off 14 times. So if that tells you how rough it
Wow,
was,
that's really cool. That's really cool.
yeah.
Very very interesting. Well, I hope that records or he has some record of it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's and then, like with our data, it'll tell us like vertical feet. So like,
Oh,
from zero, sometimes we're just like, really? Like, oh
yeah.
geez.
That'd be an awesome graphic to post. Show people. I think
Hmm.
that's really cool. I had no idea you did that. That's very cool.
Right.
So back to the setup on the boat. Do you have any kind of jack plates? Or are they on the transom, or what kind of do you have adjustability height wise?
Yeah,
Well,
we do have jack plates.
okay. You're allowed to do that, and then
Yes.
you run just like one tunnel tab, or
Yeah, we just have one tunnel tab.
okay, gotcha. And there was something else I was going to ask you if you guys did. And the motors are stock. And what do you run? Do you
Hmm.
run like what kind of propellers? Do you generally run like?
But they have to be Mercury.
But you're good now in the class you're running with the outboards, a 450 class. You're not going to go hop in a class one boat anytime soon.
As much as my crew chief wants me to or would love it to, we just don't have. I mean, we have to get a boat first of all, and we're 20 months out on production right now, so I couldn't even swing that for next season if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And then I think it's just it's a lot more time commitment. It's a larger financial commitment. I mean, it's 1100s. You got to have backups of those. That's not easy. So I think right now we're happy where we're at.
Do you ever want to just get in one just to try it?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure
Yeah,
we'll.
I think one of my bucket list goals for sure is breaking 200. That's like, I
Uh,
definitely want to do that.
yeah. But you guys would want to do that in one of your boats, though.
Yes, and we have some I think that have the capability to. I think like the Aquamania boat that's up in New York, I think that one would have the ability to. Randy's done it,
Oh, have you?
and
Okay.
yeah, he has. But that's definitely something I want to do as well.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Have you guys always been in the same location, the company?
Yes. Yeah, so our main facility is here in Winsville, Missouri, and then we have our lamination facility in Oconto, Wisconsin, which is just outside of Green Bay, and that's always been there as well. And then we have our Miami location, which is more like service and storage.
Okay, gotcha. So you guys have been in Wentzville. That's the address I recognize.
Yes.
Does it seem weird to you? And maybe this was out of my scope of understanding, but the last like 10 years, the popularity of the Ozarks has just
Oh
become
yeah.
insane. But you guys probably it sounds like you guys have probably been there when it was like kind of nobody was coming there.
Yes. Yeah, my parents had a condo there since before I was born, and then we moved condos, and we were in that one up until probably 8 years ago, and then we built a house. And so we've been there my whole life, and we had like a 42-foot Sea Ray growing up because before, a lot of people don't remember, like the center consoles were only since 2014. So growing up, it was either we had like, a 40-foot inboard, a 40, I'm trying to think, 36-foot inboard. We had a lot of the inboard cats. Well, when we were really little, my dad would take the cats out, have his fun, do that, and then we take their like 42-foot Sea Ray out. And at the time, I thought that was such a huge boat. And now you've got like 60-foot cruisers going around like the Ozarks everywhere. So it's definitely changed for sure.
Yeah. Do you feel like just telling everybody to go home and forget that you know about this place?
I mean, I'm happy that it has its popularity. It does. It's definitely brought a lot more customers to us, which is great. We have a lot more customers that have bought places there because it is a lot more inexpensive than some people coming from, like Miami or LA or like areas like that where it is a lot higher. They're like, oh, I can have a house and a dock and all this for a lot cheaper. But I will say, like, I love April and September where it's like the weather's kind of nice and the restaurants are open, but you don't have to have a reservation to get in anywhere and you can just pull up and park where you want. So those times of year, like when it is really busy, like the holiday weekends and stuff, we kind of just hang out at the pool. We'll take the boats out to breakfast, and just kind of enjoy it in a different way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess it's a blessing for the industry because it's just
Right.
it's really cool. I've never been there. Just the pictures and all the stuff's going on. It's very cool. So,
It is really nice.
and I guess I should ask where. Why don't you let people know how did your dad, how did he start? What did he start with? How was he working for somebody else, or how did he get into
Yeah.
this whole thing?
So he's been in boats his whole life. He used to race hydro streams in his early days. And he just made the right connections in the boating industry and was really, really good at setup and knowing how a boat runs and all that kind of stuff. So he eventually got a call in the 80s if he wanted to go over to Dubai, and the ruling family over there had bought I believe it was a skater, I think, and they were going to race it, and they just couldn't get it to run, couldn't get it to run. And so they brought someone else over that my dad knew. Well, that guy was married and had kids and all this kind of stuff. And he called my dad and said, hey, I can't be here much longer. I've been here, I was supposed to be here a week. I've been here 3 weeks. Like, can you come? Like, you need to figure this out. And he was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. So we went over there, figured out how to get the boat running better. They were really happy with him. And like a month later, he called my mom and he's like, yeah, I'm not really sure if I'm coming home. So they weren't married at the time. So he was like, do you want to come here? So she ended up moving over there, and they ended up living in Dubai for over 10 years. And that's how Victory Team Race Team started. So he helped start Victory Team, and they had, I believe, 10 race boats at one time. So it was a pretty serious operation. They had their own testing facility, like basically a Lake X over there. They had multi-million-dollar budgets back in like the 80s and early 90s, which was like unheard of. And so he was able to do a lot of testing and try a lot of different things with that budget that he probably wouldn't have been able to figure out otherwise. And so he did that for a long time. And then I think in 98, I think Harry Christensen, who owns,
Advantage.
yes, Advantage, thank you.
Wow, he had a West Coast connection. Huh.
Yes. I think he told my dad, like, you need to go start a boat company. Like, this whole Victory thing, like, he did what he was supposed to do over there, get the race team up, get it started, won multiple championships, and now it's kind of time to, my sister and I were 2 and 4, we're getting school age, trying to figure out, what the next game plan was, and so that's what Harry told my dad, and he was like, yeah, I don't know if anyone would be interested, and he's like, no, like, you need to do it. So he built his first boat, and he'd walk around with a briefcase of, like, what the renderings would look like, hand sketches, everything, and we sold our first couple boats, and a lot of them were race boats. You had the Tommy Bahama boat, you had the Paradise boat, you had Reliable Carriers, all those like initial MTIs that I remember when I was little. And then it kind of just took off from there. So it really started with the race boats and then went into the pleasure boats. And I think at our 25th anniversary, Michael Craig was there, and he's had a couple MTIs, and his first MTI he bought in 2001 and still has one today. So pretty incredible. We have customers that have been around for that long. And then I think of people who were there, I think the person who had the most was, we're currently building 10 and 11 for them. So they've had 11 MTIs. So pretty amazing. We have some very loyal customers, and it's grown into what it is now.
Yeah. If there's a perfect customer, right? That person
Right.
just keeps coming back and back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's just don't mess it up, which obviously you
Right.
do. So So that's cool. I didn't know that. But so then you and your sister were actually born over there.
So my mom flew back to have us when she was, like
Really?
at the point where she couldn't fly anymore, basically. My dad would fly in, have us 24 hours later, he'd be back on the plane. And as soon as we could get our like initial vaccines, passports, all that, we were back over. So she kind of just made it work.
Wow, that's amazing. And
Mhm.
that was a long time ago because I know it's kind of rough on women over there. So I guess she must have been pretty tough.
Yeah, I think so Dubai's pretty Americanized even back then. Like all the
Okay.
pictures of her, like she's in like tank tops and shorts and like so and they were my dad's boss was the ruling family and so they were treated very well.
Okay.
Um they, win a race, oh you want a car? Here, get a car. You know what I mean? It was just a different time. Like it was pretty crazy. But actually, not a lot of people know this, but my middle name is Hamid, and it's after one of my dad's race partners who passed away during the cows race back in the 90s. So it was right before I was born. So I have a former racer's namesake, which I think is pretty
Wow.
cool.
So interesting. What a great way for a guy like he's learning on somebody else's dime. He's figuring all that stuff out, and
Hmm.
that's awesome. But good for him that he came back over and did it, and obviously
Absolutely.
successfully. So what's the boat lineup look like now? What's your how many models do you have now?
So for our inboards, we have our 48 and our 52. So the 48 is our new model. So we had a 48, but we have basically a revamp. So it's completely new tooling, everything. So the first one of those is going to be at Miami Boat Show. And then for the outboards, we have the 34, the 39, and the 44. And then for our V's, we have the 42, the 50, and the 57.
Oh, everything's big and bigger.
Yes.
Well, you obviously have figured out how to make big and bigger really, really good because you're moving plenty of them. So
Yes.
very cool. So what's next? What's next on the horizon for Taylor and MTI?
I think just keep on growing in the company, learning more. I'm really excited about this new 48. That's kind of like our exciting project for Miami Boat Show because if you look like back when it was in the convention center, we had the Lamborghini boat, we had the Black Diamond boat, we had well, every Miami Boat Show, we have amazing boats there. We really want to create like the next showpiece. And the 48, it's kind of like the inboards is where we started, so we just want to bring that back. It's our 25th year, so it's kind of fitting and really show people this is where we came from, this is what we can do, and we're going to take it to the next level. So we're really excited about that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, hopefully I can be there to see that and try. So that'd be
Yes.
very cool. So obviously we've learned a lot about you today. What's something that you can tell us that people may not know about you or may find really interesting to know about you?
Ooh. I don't know. I feel like my life pretty much revolves around the boats, so I feel like that's pretty much everything. I love sharks. That's like some people know that, some people don't. I'm very passionate about sharks. They're like my favorite animal, but like with the respect to them, like I'm not gonna like jump in the water with them if I just see a rogue one. But I scuba dive. I've done a couple shark dives. I did. I went out a couple. What was that? I guess April. I went out with a crew who was a research team out of Marathon, and we were looking for great hammerheads to do tagging and satellite tags and acoustic tags, so we could get some more data on those. So anything involving sharks, I just think it's super cool. I think they're amazing creatures, and Shark Week's like my favorite time of the year. So that's my fun fact.
Yeah. Well, that's a great fun fact. That's really cool. It's cool you took something that you liked and you really, you're really going for it and really, learning more and more. I mean, you're doing dives and tagging. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, anything I can do to help. I really want to go over to the Bimini Shark Lab. It's probably the best shark lab in our general area. So I still want to go over there, but in the past couple of years they were closed for COVID, and now they've changed the way they can get permits for research. So now you have to go through in the Bahamas. You have to be like locally in the Bahamas to be able to get your research permit done. And so a lot of people are having to go through the Shark Lab, the Bimini Shark Lab, to be able to get those done right now. So they're pretty backed up with education and research programs at the moment. But they have some pretty cool experiences where you can it's you pay, but all the money really goes towards the research and everything, and you get to do things with them and see their the juvenile sharks, and hammerhead mating season, I believe, is January. So if you go in that time of year, you see more of that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting. Some pretty cool stuff they're doing.
That is so interesting. That is really cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's very cool. So, well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for all the information. We've never met before, but I'm glad that we've got this together, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. We'll keep an eye on you and your racing and the company, and let us know too. Where can we find you personally? Where can we find the company on social media, website, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook page that's Taylor Scism. It's a fan page, so people can follow me there. And then also my Instagram is taylor.scism, so pretty easy to remember for both of them. And then also MTI's MTI Boats across all platforms.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you very much. Good luck. Good luck. Now, did you say is your dad still on vacation right now, or did he come back?
He's still on vacation.
Okay, cool. All right. So you're still doing that. You're still doing the Home Alone thing.
Yes.
All right. Well, good luck with that. Hopefully, everybody behaves and everything works out well. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. And
thank you. Care. You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Powerboat Talk. If you like what you've heard, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. For more Powerboat Talk, follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website at powerboattalk.com.